Yes, my name is Alan Mullinax. Some of you may know me as Outlaw Patriot, maybe. Okay. Okay, no gunshots.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
They're using directed energy weapons.
Sure.
You might be microwaved as we speak.
Yeah. You know, any of the militia people down in Florida probably know me strictly as Outlaw. But I'm a college professor. I teach at Palm Beach State College. Just a disclaimer, I'm not a history teacher. All right, I teach a low voltage systems program. Try to get young men who are, what should I say, disoriented and not really sure about what they're supposed to do. And, you know, I get them in my class and I put them on a track where they have a decent career, make some good money. But I've been studying this history stuff for a long time now. I know every time Peter and I get together, we talk about how long it's been since so-and-so, or how long, you know, when did that happen? And now approaching 70 years old, some of that stuff's getting way back in the past, you know what I mean? But I've got, I don't know, 20, 25 years at this now. I'm always amazed at what I find out. No matter where I go, even if I've been there 10 times, I still find something else. And of late, over the last couple of years, I've been trying to concentrate on, you know, who the people were. Who were those guys that did these things? I often wonder why. You know, we came up with all these systems, these great systems and everything, but, you know, they seem to be failing. Okay? Why? Who were the guys that came up with the original gig? What did they think? How did they handle things? And like I said, this is an ongoing thing for me, but these people were different. They were unlike anything we've got walking around today, I assure you. Okay? Original Americans. Original Americans. And they thought differently. Today, you've got a lot of turmoil. I don't know, what is it? Cry havoc, let loose the dogs of war, or something like that.
Very good.
Okay? We think that this is, you know, maybe the end of the world. Well, we've been through it a few times, kids. You know, I would submit that 1860 was probably not such a great time either, right? And then getting back to my topic for today, 1780 was no better. Okay, 1780. Those of you that know something about the Revolutionary War, by 1780, you know, after Saratoga, the Battle of Saratoga, things went stagnant in the northern colonies. No major battles going on. Washington's not strong enough to take over the, you know, to kick the British out. And the British, quite frankly, they were happy just to sit there in New York and stay warm and eat good.
Rather than getting shot?
Rather than getting shot. Well, the other thing you have to understand about 18th century warfare, if you really get into it, the actual fight was to be avoided at all costs. There was always something of a maneuver or try to put the guy in a position where he leaves or something. Fighting was a last resort to an 18th century military man.
It was a gentlemanly act. In warfare, it was a gentlemanly act. It was negotiated back and forth.
Well, thank you. That's also something that we find in the character of the men of that time. Honorable individuals, incredibly honorable, and incredibly courteous for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some savageness going on from time to time, but you know, generally speaking, these were honorable men, and they did try to negotiate as much as possible until the last moment. Okay? And when that last moment came, guess what? They were not afraid to act. Okay? They were not afraid to act. And the other thing is, especially in this area, okay, of this area of South Carolina. Do I have South Carolinians here? Got a few of you? This area, okay, this was the back country, or the up country, if you will, all right? The low country, Charleston, 50 miles outside of the, along the coast, was the low country. It was those guys that kind of ran everything, okay? And here in South Carolina, they kind of ignored these folks out here. Now, these folks didn't mind that. They were the independent characters, right? They really didn't want any government interfering with what they were doing. They were just fine on their own. They took care of it. But when the legalities came in, like land sales, what are the borders of this? How am I dealing with the Indians? What are the borders of my property, and so on and so forth? There was no courts or law past the low country out here. These guys were all on their own out here. And consequently, animosity grew, okay, between the people out here in the frontier, if you will, and the low country. All right, so we already have this animosity going on. When the revolution started, guess what? What do you think the people back out here thought about it?
Well, not my fight.
Not my fight. I don't care. And that they pretty much stayed out of it. Okay? They weren't real interested in getting involved in something that had no bearing on them. Okay? But then a man named William Henry Drayton in Charleston got together a couple of reverends and a high-ranking militia officer, and he toured through South Carolina, through the back country, and he's talking to all the militia leaders and trying to get them organized to fight the British. And what do you suppose happened there?
Not my fight.
Some did. Some did. Some said, okay, I'll go with the Whig cause. And some said, nope, I'm going to stay loyal to the king, the Tories. And then once that started, okay, William Henry had the Tory militia leaders picked up, in essence, okay? And so consequently, South Carolina was relatively quiet, especially after 1776, when the British tried to take Charleston, okay, Sullivan's Island, and they were repulsed. And they went home, or back up to New York anyway. So consequently, it was real quiet around here, for the most part. There was basically what was going on here was a civil war, okay? These different militia groups, different individuals, they were, stealing out of homes, turning women out in their night clothes, women and children out in their night clothes, taking everything in the house. The Tory militia would do that, and then the Whig militia would go after them and do the same thing to them. And so what's going on here really is civil war, okay? Civil war. And then right around 1780, just before, starting in 1780, the British decide, since we're stagnated, or we're stalemated up in the north, we're going to start a southern campaign. And we're going to go down to Charleston, and we're going to go through South Carolina, work our way up through North Carolina, through Virginia, and then we're going to link up there and we're going to crush Washington. That was the object. That was their campaign. They thought they could pull it off because they were told by expats in Britain that all the king had to do was present his standard, and his loyal subjects would flock to his army, to his standard, and then they would be able to win the war. Only one thing, one problem. There was some guys. There was some guys. These guys wanted nothing to do with it. Nothing. One particular character, Isaac Shelby, Isaac Shelby was actually illegal, if you will. Okay? He crossed over the mountains. The king said that the line of demarcation between the Indians and the white man was along the Blue Ridge, on the ridge right at the top. Where did Isaac Shelby go? Over the ridge, on the Holston River. And he and his people went over there. Jean Savy, a French Huguenot, did the same thing. He went over to the Nolichucky River over the ridge line. These guys wanted to be left alone. All right? But then Charleston fell, 1780. The British come down. This time, they went for broke. They brought all kinds of power into that area, laid siege to the city, and it eventually fell. Now, when that fell, now these backcountry people started to wake up a little bit. But the British said, hey, listen, tell you what, everybody's on parole. As long as you go home, sit in your house, and don't bother us, don't take up arms again, we're fine.
Wear your mask.
Sounds like lockdown to me.
Wear your mask. Okay? It's not unlike that. What did we say this morning? You know, history never repeats,
But it rhymes.
but it rhymes. Okay? But Clinton, you know, right before he got on board the boat to go back home, he changed that proclamation and said, nah, you guys gotta take up arms for the king and basically fight your own people. Not gonna happen. Okay? So guys like Isaac Shelby, John Savy, William Campbell, all these backcountry guys, they started running raids, okay, and running skirmishes with the British forces. Who were the British forces here? Anybody know?
Loyalists.
They were just America. They were the guys. You know, there was no real, you know, heavy influence of British soldiers here. What they were doing was recruiting Tory militia, okay, trying to train them up and get them going, you know, and letting them do the dirty work. They were told by the expats in Britain that this would work. So consequently, what would happen is, you see it over and over and over again, you'd have a meeting, okay, Tory meeting. All right, we're gonna get the militia together, say like Ramsar's Mills, okay. They're gonna have a meeting and they're gonna get organized and put their militia together. And then guess what would happen? The Whig militia would find out about it, and then they'd come in and tear them up. Okay? And so they managed to keep it relatively suppressed. You know, this was pretty much Whig controlled. Okay? Pretty much Whig controlled here in South Carolina. There were some bad Tories, the Cunninghams, Thomas Brown, you know, these guys were some good military tacticians, and they were excellent militia leaders. They were Tories, but you know, it was almost like an internecine fight that's going on. These guys are just slugging it out. And Isaac Shelby started taking on a man called Ferguson. All right, Ferguson was the inspector of militia, and he was tasked with raising Tory militia, training them, and putting them in the field, and protecting Cornwallis's left flank. As Cornwallis came out of Charleston and moved up through Camden, and then eventually he got as far as Charlotte, you know, on this run. Okay, Ferguson was going to protect this left flank. Shelby and Savy and some other boys from North Carolina, the Burke County boys, Wilkes County boys, were harassing these guys, okay? And Ferguson sent out a message to Isaac Shelby with a man called Samuel Phillips. Sam was a relative of Isaac Shelby, and he told him, he said to go tell Isaac that they have to lay down their arms, and I'm going to paraphrase here, I don't remember exactly what it is, to lay down their arms, repair to the king's standard. If not, I will bring my army over the mountain, I will hang your leaders, and I will destroy your land with fire and sword. A threat. He issued that from Gilbert Town, which is near present-day Rutherfordton, North Carolina. A little bit north is where it was. Sam found Isaac and told him. Isaac goes. First thing he did, went out and saddled up his horse, rode 40 miles to go see John Savee. He gets to John's house, and what does he find? The whole community is having a jollification, what they call a jollification. These people are partying down, man. They're having a barbecue, they're horse racing, they're fist fighting. They're just having a great time. And Isaac tells John, listen, dude, we got a problem. And John says, it ain't that big a deal, you know? And Isaac keeps pressing him and says, hey, listen, we gotta talk about this, all right? And he finally gets his attention, explains things to him, and then these two guys start contacting other militia groups throughout Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. We got to get this guy over a threat. All it was a threat, and they're going to go get this guy. They put together a force up near present-day Elizabethton, Tennessee. It's called Sycamore Shoals, was the militia ground there. It's still there if you want to go up there and take a look at it. They started bringing in forces. These militia groups started assembling at Sycamore Shoals. Isaac Shelby had 240 men. John Savee had 240. William Campbell brought 400 militiamen from Abington, Virginia. McDowell's North Carolinians were already there. They had been running some skirmishing down there. They were already resting near Sycamore Shoals, so those guys, a large group of men were there. The women were there, okay, all the families. What are they doing? They're making clothes, they're sewing, they're parching corn, they're melting lead into balls.
Auxiliary stuff.
Auxiliary stuff. Okay, the families. I don't know if anybody's been to Sycamore Shoals, but it's a big, gigantic open area. Okay, along the river there. I can just imagine what it must have looked like. Okay, powder, the black powder that these guys needed was donated, believe it or not, by a woman who owned a powder factory. Okay, she learned the trade from her father. Mary Patton was her name, and she's the one that actually donated the black powder to the group. When they left out of Sycamore Shoals on the 26th of September, they were 1,000 strong when they left Elizabethton. And they started making their way towards Gilbert Town because that's the last known location of Patrick Ferguson. That's where they thought that they could find him, and they expected to engage in combat with him there and defeat him at Gilbert Town. And as they moved south, came off the Roan Mountain, the snow was shoe-top height deep. Okay, they're already in a little snow. It's cold. They've got I don't know, probably about 60, 70 miles to cover. And as they're going along, these other militia groups are joining them. It's like a stream. Okay, North Carolina guys. Like say Benjamin Cleveland, for instance, his group from Wilkes County, the Burke County boys. Everybody starts coming together in this stream of men coming down from eastern Tennessee to go find Patrick Ferguson. They get to Gilbertown, and Ferguson's gone. And if you go into detail on it about exactly what he did, I think he knew he screwed up. That's what I think. You know, if you go through everything and read about what was happening here, it takes a long time to go through all that material. But I think he shot off his mouth and thought, you know, probably bit off something that he couldn't chew. Because he was meandering around, he's sending messages back to Cornwallis, he's not sure of where he's going, he's only covering on a couple of days, only 3 or 4 miles. He just seemed to be lost, okay?
How many men does he have at this point?
Okay, the Tory force that Patrick had was 1,000 Tory militia and roughly 120 provincials from New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. All right. Ferguson is the only British soldier. Everybody else is Americans. There are no other British soldiers in that unit except him. After they couldn't find him, or after he was gone from Gilbertown, they kept moving south. They were confused because the trail was going in all different types of directions. They couldn't figure out what this guy was doing, you know. I think he was looking for a safe haven. I think he was probably trying to get back nearer to Cornwallis, where he might be able to get some reinforcements, because like I said, I think he generally felt that he had a problem. The Whig force got to Cowpens, which is about, I don't know, 50 miles west of here, give or take. They got there on a Friday night. They were met with South Carolina militiamen, say James Williams group, another 400 militiamen, and they picked 900, the best 900 men that they had in horses. And they took another 85 on foot and set out on Friday night in a cold rain, okay? They had information that he was up ahead, somewhere up ahead, and they were trying to close with him before he could get to Cornwallis. Saturday morning, they had a couple of other things happen. They found a girl that had taken up chickens to them on Kings Mountain. They captured a boy. Kid's name was Pounder. He was taking the last message that Cornwallis was sending to, last message that Ferguson was sending to Cornwallis. Cornwallis is telling him, you know, send me 300 guys, mostly dragoons, and this business will be finished. Okay? Well, obviously that message never got through. Wouldn't have done any good anyway, because Cornwallis was deathly ill. Okay? He was sick as a dog. Bannister Tarleton was sick as a dog. Charles Hanger, the other cavalry officer, sick as a dog. Nobody probably would have done anything anyway had they got the message. Okay? The rain, and if anybody's a hunter around here, you know when it rains, you walk around here on the dry leaves, what do you get? Crunch, 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 right? You get a nice rain, what happens? You can move a lot more silently, correct? Well, that's exactly what they did. They knew he was up on Kings Mountain, okay? Not really a mountain. I don't know if anybody's been there and seen it. It's a saddle, okay? Not unlike a human foot, if you will, okay? Goes from the southeast to the southwest to the northeast, the heel up at the northeast section, and you know, the toes, if you will, down. It's wider at the one end than it is the other. Steep as hell, okay? Back in the day, that was old growth forest, not like what you see around here today, okay? These trees were monstrous, You know, most of these were 3-4 feet in diameter, plenty of rock, little undergrowth, and the top of that mountain was basically bare. The top of that hill was basically bare. Ferguson made the statement that nobody could throw him off. God Almighty himself could not remove him from the top of that mountain. I love some of these guys, the way some of the stuff they say. Like Christian Huck, you know, loudmouth Pennsylvania lawyer, captain in Bannister Tarleton's British Legion. He said he didn't care if it rained militia. And then he caught a load of buck and ball right behind his ear. Love these guys, okay? Ferguson didn't even have them make breastworks. These guys are up on top of this hill, okay, on a bare-topped hill, all right? And then the Whig militias all divided up and surrounded this hill in their groups. To the southwest was Campbell's group, John Sabee, Isaac Shelby. They took that end. North Carolina, South Carolina boys took the other side. They had the further way to go. They had the longer way to go. They were late getting there, by the way. Okay, the fighting started before they even actually got into position. One of the pickets saw some of Isaac Shelby's guys and fired a shot. But good fire discipline. The militiamen, the Whig militiamen didn't fire back. Okay, they kept silent till they got all the way into position. And then William Campbell on the southwest side is basically the one that started the fight. You know, took off his jacket, told his boys to scream like banshees and fight like hell, and up the mountain they went. Okay, the provincials, those guys from New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey, were guarding that. They were the ones that had the perimeter at the southwest side. I believe, I've talked to a couple of rangers and they never give me a straight answer on it. I think that was the road up on the mountain that they brought the wagons up. Because he brought up I think he had 18 wagons, and they had tents and everything else that they set up in the saddle of this hill, okay, the camp, and then spread out a perimeter across the top. Fighting started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was rough. It was really rough. If you've been over there, and if somebody wants to go over there today, I'll be happy to go over there with you and walk that with you and show you some things. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. It's steep. The trees and the rocks that are around at the bottom of it, there's a lot of underbrush there now today, but it must have been extremely physically exhausting to start at the bottom of that hill and try to get up to the top while somebody's shooting at you. Okay? But there was one benefit. These guys were frontiersmen. These guys had been fighting Indians. These guys had been baptized by fire. What do you think they did? You think they lined up just like regular 18th century soldiers and sat there and slug it out with an opposing force? No. What they did is they used the trees, and they moved from place to place. And even though that especially the provincials on the southwest section, they did 3 bayonet charges against Campbell and Shelby and Sabee. Ran them completely back down the mountain. And then these guys would get up on the other side, turn around and come right back. They did this 3 times. And then what happened was, it was basically attrition. Slowly but surely, they picked off enough of those guys at the top. So now they're up, the guys on the southwest side are up. And now what do? They just start working their way across the ridge. And about the time they work their way across the ridge, the other guys on the northeast, they start to top out. And now they have the survivors, if you will, in a crossfire. And white flags, white handkerchiefs are coming up. They're trying to quit. Ferguson is riding around on his horse with his sword, and he's cutting down the surrender flags and telling them that they had to keep fighting. All right? And then it got so bad, and the firing got so heavy, that Ferguson and his officers, they tried to make a breakout on the northeast side. And when they did, Ferguson took, well, it varies. Some people say, some literature says 7 shots, some say 8, some say 9. But he took several shots. Anyway, broke both arms. He was shot in the head. And they said his red check shirt was all cut up, and he fell off the horse, and his left foot was still hanging in the stirrup. And some loyalists grabbed him, dragged him out of fire, set him up against a tree, and both loyalists and Whigs stood around and watched him die. Ferguson's second in command, DePeyster, Captain DePeyster, let the fighting go on for a little bit longer before he went ahead and said, okay, this is enough, let's surrender. Unfortunately, one thing happened here. There was, after the fall of Charleston, Bannister Tarleton took off after a group of Continentals under command of Buford. And when they caught up with those guys, they literally butchered them. All right. Some people say it didn't really happen, but if you look at the casualties and read some of the accounts of the people that lived around in that area, that's what they did. Okay. They didn't accept surrender. They didn't accept the surrender, and they butchered those Continental soldiers. Well, these guys knew about that, and they weren't about to back off on these guys up there on that mountain, and they started basically the same type of thing, all right? Even if they had a white flag up, they went ahead and still started shooting them down, okay? Took a little while for Shelby and Campbell to get control of these guys and stop this thing, okay? But by the time it settled down, and it only took about 50 minutes to 60 minutes for all of this to take place, they captured 600 of the 1,100, okay, and 500 were laying up there dead and wounded along that hill.
Which is really high casualties for that time period.
Absolutely. I don't know, I've got my flintlock, okay? I've often wondered, okay, especially I have a rifle. I have one of the supposedly real, what they really would have had. Smoothbore musket, you can fire probably 3 rounds in a minute. I'm lucky if I can get off 2, okay? I'm lucky if I can get loaded and fire before somebody ran at me from 50 yards with a bayonet, So that casualty rate is really, really high for that type of a battle, okay? Ferguson was carried off the mountain down to the bottom in a little ravine there, and he was buried. They buried him right there on site. He's got there's a cairn there now, a Scottish cairn. Supposedly one of his concubines are in there with him, Virginia Sow. He had 2 women that accompanied him up onto the mountain, and both of them were named Virginia. Okay, you had Virginia Paul and Virginia Sow.
It's easy to keep their names straight.
Well, that's what the men joked about. They said it was easy for them because they're both named Virginia, so we don't have to worry about it. Anyway, Virginia Sow probably got killed in the very first salvo. She had flaming red hair, and so did Ferguson. And so from a distance maybe they might have thought it was him, and they actually killed Virginia Sow pretty early in the battle. Virginia Paul mounted a horse and just calmly rode down off the mountain between all the guys that were firing. I think they asked her, that they knew he wore a red checked shirt over his uniform coat. They knew what he looked like, and she confirmed that, told him that he's up there and he's wearing a red checked shirt. But they ended up capturing her later, and they sent her back to Cornwallis and Charlotte. So she did survive the battle. Ferguson and if we believe everything, or believe the certain accounts, both of them were wrapped up in a raw beef hide, okay, and chunked in a hole over there, okay, down at the base of the mountain, and he's still there today, okay. The rest of the dead and wounded, the dead were hastily buried. The Whigs were worried that Tarleton was close, and they didn't want to have anything to do with him, and they wanted to get out of there quick. So consequently, the dead were not buried very well. They were either in very shallow graves, or maybe only had rocks thrown on them, or tree bark or something. For years, or for months afterwards, the place was loaded with wolves. Okay, it was dangerous to be in the area at night around here with the wolves. They quit eating their pigs. The local people around here quit eating their pigs because the pigs were eating the dead. Okay, they said that they were very fat, but they wouldn't eat the pigs for a while. Okay, while those guys were up there. They tried to take those 600 guys home, or take them back to prison up in North Carolina. However, all but about 120, 150 of them escaped. But at one point along that road, some of the Whigs identified or knew that some of these Tory militiamen were guilty of crimes, and they wanted to hold a court. And most of the militia colonels were also justices of the peace or magistrates, so they were quite capable of putting together a court. And that's exactly what they did. They identified certain of these guys. They held this trial and condemned them to death, and along the route, they started hanging them, okay? They started hanging them 3 at a time from an oak tree. They got 9 hung before Campbell put a stop to it, okay? So, again, these guys were different. They were different, you know? You don't, we hear today, well, what do? The Supreme Court says, no, can't do anything. We're gonna let this go. You think those guys would have let it go? Yes, sir.
My 5th great grandpa, or 6 grandpas ago, came down with Benjamin Cleveland. He was from the edge of Wilkes in Surrey County.
Yeah.
He was 62. That'd be like a 100-year-old man now. Came down and fought, survived, went back. But up there where I was from, they had a specific oak, lived 200.
That's in Wilkes County, at the old courthouse.
They had a Tory oak there.
The hanging, Tory oak. Yeah.
I remember as a kid in elementary school, they would take you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Tory oak, and they hung the Tories. Can you imagine that happening now to your kindergarten and first grade kids?
Well,
They wouldn't think of it.
no. Well, you had guys like Benjamin Cleveland, absolutely hated Tories. I mean, hated them. Campbell hated them. I mean, these guys. These guys. They looked at the Tories as, affecting their lives and their livelihoods, and they wanted no part of these guys. They treated them like vermin. Benjamin Cleveland got called one time from a sheriff, or I think it was a sheriff in one of the North Carolina towns, and said, "Hey, listen, Ben, why don't you get over here?" He said, "I got a couple of Tories locked up. You can come get them, take them back to the courthouse, try them, all this stuff." Cleveland shows up. He talks to him for a second. He figures out which one's the leader, and he takes that leader straight to the tree and hangs him. He tells the other guy, "Tell you what, I'll give you a choice. You can hang up there with your friend, or you can take a knife and cut off your own ears and leave the territory forever." The guy thought for a while, asked for a knife and a whetstone, sharpened the knife, cut off his own ears, and was never seen again. Okay? And along the route, probably Benjamin Cleveland was the one that was behind the hangings on that route.
You said earlier that Ferguson had made, a threat. In those days, frontier people, you were nice to each other. They were a polite society. You said, "I will kill you." That was a literal statement. So
Yes.
when he said that, it was hell on men.
Yes, exactly correct. So when somebody tells you that they're going to take your AR-15 rifles,
Take them at their word.
or that you're going to have to pay $200 for a tax stamp for every 30-round magazine you own, what is all the other garbage that these people are talking?
Yeah, everybody's got a plan.
Everybody's got a plan, I was amazed today. It's a bold new ideas, but all the people there are the same ones. I can't figure that out. I don't know I guess those people had epiphanies or something over the last 4 years. But anyway, my point to all this, I tried to condense this.
No.
Okay, I didn't, I don't want to take up all your time here, but the key to this is, at this point, okay, they were different. These people were different, these first Americans. They thought differently, okay? They looked at the world differently. And they would act immediately, without, with all extreme violence and malice that they could muster, they would act.
They suffered no offense.
They were fine, but if the Cherokee came in and came onto the frontier, which they did in 1776, okay, at the urging of the British, they wanted to go ahead and keep these frontier people tied up, and they wanted to, try to eliminate as many of them as possible. Well, guess what happened? These Whig militia mounted up, and they virtually wiped out the Cherokee, from Georgia all the way up into North Carolina. Ran those people off, burned their crops, burned their towns, and turned them out into the mountains in the winter. And didn't think twice about it, Because these guys were doing, the Indians were doing what they were doing at the urging of the British. Okay? These guys took threats literally. And again, I'm always amazed at how polite and courteous they were, how helping how they would help other people and do everything. But boy, oh boy, when you crossed them, okay? Katie bar the door. Katie bar the door. Any questions? I know that was a kind of a quick overview. I tried to cram
A lot of
a
stuff.
lot of stuff in a very short period of time, but I hope you get the gist.
Let's give Alan a big hand.